reveals how German war graves off the east coast are being desecrated by divers searching for scrap metal.
The North Sea has been a battleground in 2 world wars. Germany's U-boats were the scourge of the east coast. Thousands went to their deaths in ships sunk by an unseen enemy. Deep below the waves, the wrecks of Hunter and Hunted still lie almost untouched. Tonight, Close Up North meets the divers pushing the limits of their sport to explore the relics of long-forgotten battles. And we reveal the loophole in the law that allows others to pillage war graves. It was in the First World War that submarine warfare first brought terror to the shipping lanes along the east coast. Merchant ships were shelled within sight of Scarborough. U-boats sowed mines off the Humber, but when they were caught, their crews faced a terrible death. The end of the holiday season in Scarborough, and members of Keighley Sub-Aqua Club prepare for a weekend expedition. The dive boat Jane R specialises in finding the wrecks of First World War U-boats.
Coastal waters forecast at 6 p.m. has a variable southwesterly wind of force 2 or 3 with local sea breezes. In the afternoon, the weather is fair.
Satellite navigation now allows divers to plot their positions with pinpoint accuracy. Jane R's skipper is an acknowledged expert on U-boat wrecks.
We're approximately 1 mile away. They're wanting to dive this wreck here, so hopefully we should be able to go right over it. Now we've got satellite navigation, anybody can do it. We've got the odd mystery too, you know, like the one off Flamborough Head that shouldn't be there. Some further up in deeper water, which will turn up eventually. So in this area, there's probably about 4.
It's often misunderstood that when ships go down, people know exactly where they are. I think the Germans are quite happy that people are finding them, and they're reporting that they've been found, the positions they are, and the condition of the boat. I think that gives them more information for their archives. You can imagine that it would be a comfort as well to the relatives to know where the final resting place was.
90 feet below the Jane R lies the UC-39, sunk in 1918 off Hornsea.
240. Right.
Modern diving equipment puts it well within the reach of weekend divers.
Sean will go down first, on his own.
Okay.
When the signal comes up, you go down after him, alright? So you can sit down for a minute.
For submarine UC-39, time stopped on the 3rd of February 1917. Caught by a British destroyer, she was badly damaged by a depth charge. Her captain surfaced and was killed by a shell. Most of her crew were captured. Captain Otto Ehrentraut of the Imperial German Navy went down with his ship.
Yeah, it's really nice.
That's good, yeah. Quite good visibility down there, what we're expecting. Thoroughly enjoyable. The sea's a pretty cruel place. There's one or two broken plates and cups and things like that down there. I would imagine that the only way that you can describe something like that, it must have been horrendous for the poor lads that were on there, because like, once they're on the way down, there's no coming back for them. They can't get out of that thing. It must have been a pretty hot, sweaty, fearful time. I wouldn't want to be in their boots, not for anybody's money.
Germany's Baltic coast. It was in these waters the first U-boats were tested. Later, Hitler's wolf pack sailed from here. Now, the last survivor of the Second World War fleet is marooned on the beach, a museum piece for tourists. A few miles away, the U-boat pens are empty. They were devastated by Allied air attacks, but they're the focus of a renewed interest in the men who fought beneath the waves.
Today you are here in the U-boat archives, and it is the only place in the world where you can really find everything about U-boats.
Horst Bredow was a U-boat officer and now runs the archive.
I supported a lot of divers. They asked me when they found a boat. They tell me the position of the boat, and then I can see in my files and in my knowledge what boat it could be. Most divers ask, are there killed people aboard? Because when killed people is aboard of wrecks, it is a grave.
One such grave is the UB-30, which disappeared off Whitby in 1918. Its whereabouts would still be a mystery, but for two divers from Scarborough.
What's seen is that there are people on the Marine Drive at Scarborough, presumably, looking out to sea, and there's an explosion on the horizon. So
Andrew Jackson and Carl Racy are obsessed by the search for missing U-boats. With fellow members of Scarborough Sub-Aqua Club, they spend most summer weekends diving, their winters compiling a database of the East Coast's wartime wrecks.
Yeah, it is.
The fact it's in this area at this time does sort of put it in the right place.
So one of those is going to be the wreck off Flamborough Head, and the other two we don't have an awful lot of clues on. It's a historical treasure as far as I'm concerned. That's the main drive of things. If you know something's lost in an area and you've got lots of contacts in that area, it's just a slog really to get round them all, dive them all and work by process of elimination.
Today they're visiting Britain's only U-boat in a warship museum on Merseyside. While U-boat crews were calculating killers to the British seamen they stalked, Andrew and Carl regard them as courageous men. They found Germany still cares about its lost mariners.
When we found the UB-30, we contacted the German government and told them exactly where it was, and yes, they are very interested. Generally, their records will tell them where their last communication was, so they'll have an approximate position, and that's it. It's information that helps us to find them, but it's never very exact. Again, red lighting, they will be at red lighting most of the time, I would imagine. And the optics are really good. In actual fact, there's about the most room in the submarine.
The discovery of the UB-30, lost with all hands, was the end of months of research work.
The UB-30 was out on a coastal patrol. It had come from Bruges, it had come up past Flamborough Head, and it was off Scarborough in August, and it sank a small steamer called the Madame Rene. The sinking of the Madame Rene actually alerted the patrols to the fact that it was there, and so they were on red alert at that time. 3 days after the sinking of the Madame Rene, they actually found the UB-30 off Whitby. The commander was Oberleutnant Stier, apparently he wasn't particularly experienced. Unbeknown to him, 300 yards away was a trawler, an armed trawler called the John Gilman. The trawler proceeded across the top of him and bent his periscope. They proceeded to take pot shots at him. He dived again immediately. Just 10 minutes later he surfaced again, and that was for the final time, basically. The next time he went down. The depth charges obviously did the job, and that was the end of the UB-30. Generally we dive steamships, and I kind of liken this to the sheep out there, effectively. And we knew there were one or two wolves out there, the U-boats. So it was always a bit of a drive, really. It was always interesting to go and find a U-boat. The depth is more than 50 metres. When you get to about 30 metres, the light starts to go. You put your torch on, and you're never quite sure just what's going to come out of the gloom in front of you. With the UB-30 on that day, there was a white cigar shape laid out in front of us, just stretching off into the distance, and we knew from that moment, at 40 metres, what it was. And that's quite an exciting moment, as you can imagine. It's quite exhilarating. It is an absolutely incredible feeling to have a piece of history sat in front of you and to be able to touch it and bring history off the page, effectively. You've really got to be careful with your feelings down there, because the pressure and the narcosis can take over, so you've got to be really in control of things. But yes, you can't help thinking about, you know, there's 23 men inside that hull. 2 officers on board, 23 men, and none of them escaped. So they're still down there, entombed within that wreck.
Back in a seafront pub in a bar decorated with nautical souvenirs rescued from the seabed, the Keighley Sub-Aqua Club prepares for another day's diving. Recovering relics is a diving tradition.
Deck gun, just in front of the... Hit my leg on the conning, just forward of the conning tower. One of the reasons why clubs particularly are very, very sensitive about shipwrecks and artefacts is that if you find something, you have a duty to report it. Divers are quite keen to maybe find the odd artefact, take it home, polish it up, put it on the mantelpiece. Odd bits and pieces like that seem fairly harmless fun, but it's still theft. We're privileged in the fact that we can go down, we can see these things, we can pick them up, touch them, feel them, have a look at them, and take a U-boat. How many people in this country have actually seen a First World War German U-boat? It's not many people. It's not many people. It's a little piece of history that's sitting on the seabed, and there is a certain amount of respect that you've got to give an item like that, and certainly wouldn't dream of taking anything from a U-boat.
But daylight reveals other divers aren't so principled. Scarborough Harbour sees regular illicit landings of war relics. After a week-long trip to the scene of the First World War Battle of Jutland, where 8,000 sailors died, a team of divers from the south coast land their booty. It's a graphic illustration of the law's apparent inability to prevent the plundering of wartime wrecks.
I've got a couple of large shell cases, and also what we think is something, a round thing which holds, we think probably, yes, for holding a drum of some kind. I mean, they're what we would call trinkets. They'll fit on the mantelpiece. I mean, obviously they've got to be cleaned up, but they are, they're interesting. They've got a bit of history with them, which, you know, which I think is why you pick bits up.
Technically, all items recovered from the seabed should be handed in to the receiver of wreck, but it's a rule few seem to obey.
you've got to respect, a lot of people have died on some of these wrecks, and basically you can't go into, if people have died, you're not allowed into them to rip them apart and basically rob from the dead as such.
The White Cliffs of Flamborough Head were the favourite hunting ground of German U-boat skippers. Merchant ships heading south for the Humber or north for the Tyne would be silhouetted against the chalk. Diver Barry Thompson found one of the Kaiser's raiders on an expedition organised by Hull Sub-Aqua Club. The UC-75 had lain untouched since her loss during the First World War, on an area of seabed littered with British shipping she'd helped sink.
All the wrecks, or most of the wrecks, are charted on the Admiralty charts, so it's just a case of fitting all the bits of the jigsaw together, and then fortunately we struck lucky with the UC-75. I was first in the water and I went down. I came down onto the stern side, and the stern torpedo tube was exposed. Part of the outer casing had been broken away, and there was about 20 foot of 2.5 foot diameter non-ferrous metal sticking out from the back. So I had a pretty fair idea then that it was something special, and it was the U-boat that we was looking for. And I swam forward to the conning tower and could see the conning tower, and then the deck gun, which was just in front of the conning tower. And as I say, it was complete, pristine condition. It was covered in anemones and dead men's fingers, and it was a majestic sight. It was covered in fishing nets as well. There was a lot of fishing nets on it. So it was that was a good first dive.
As a war grave, Barry's discovery should have commanded respect, but more than time and tide has taken its toll on the UC-75.
We went out one Sunday and it had obviously been salvaged. After we'd dived it, it was a completely different wreck. The torpedo tubes had been removed, and the stern tube had gone as well, and explosives had been used on it, and it completely swept the wreck. I'm not quite sure who did it. It's, I mean, there's a number of people with the capabilities, but if there's bodies on it, then I think it should be left alone.
At the U-boat archive, the UC-75's crew manifest is still on file.
Wir haben hier alle U-Boote registriert, die im Ersten Weltkrieg untergegangen sind. Zum Beispiel das U-Boot.
Here we have all the U-boats registered which were sunk during the First World War. For example, U-boat UC-75. We can see the U-boat's base, the flotilla to which it belonged, the captain's name, and here with U-boat UC-75, the captain was called Schmitz. This U-boat was sunk on the 31st of May 1918 off the east coast of England, and here the crew are listed. You can see 19 men were on it when it went down, and only 14 survived. I think it's good that the location has been established. We don't often have any exact locations, but it should be left alone, and it shouldn't be interfered with.
Divers dived into a boat and brought out bones and so on by German U-boat men and sailed it aboard, sailed it ashore, and that's not so good. All boats with killed people should be graves, should be war graves, and they shouldn't be touched.
Kiel, on Germany's Baltic coast, was where many U-boats were built. Hans Holst sailed from Kiel as an engineer. Now he helps run the memorial to the shipmates who never came back.
Wenn man das in Prozente umrechnet, dann hat die U-Bootswaffe die meisten Verluste.
If you work out the death rates, it was the U-boat crews who suffered the greatest losses of all. If the war had lasted a little bit longer, they would have wiped us all out. War is always gruesome, on the German or any other side. You can be killed at any time. It's quite simple. a seaman's grave should just be left in peace.
30,000 German submariners died in the two world wars. Dozens of boats are still missing. Many more are known only by approximate positions. For the Kramer family, this is an emotional pilgrimage in memory of a brother killed in his early 20s. Respect for war graves is deeply ingrained in Germany.
Max Kramer.
Incidents like the salvaging of the UC-75 are regarded with outrage.
Und hier liegt das U-Boot als Wrack.
The U-boat wreckage is just lying there at the bottom of the sea, and it's being broken up and desecrated. Such a thing shouldn't be allowed to happen. And those carrying out the desecration should be prosecuted. That's quite simple. The desecrations like vandals going round smashing up headstones. They should just leave them in peace.
My husband's U-boat was sunk by bombing from the air. There's nothing worse. He and his comrades should just be left in peace.
Back in Britain, there's evidence even respected diving clubs have removed items from submarines. Scarborough Sub-Aqua Club has a U-boat periscope in its bar. In Bridlington, a propeller and shell cases from the UC-39 are on show. Once there were receivers of wreck in most ports. Now, from her office in Southampton, Veronica Robbins is expected to police the whole of Britain. We asked her about the UC-75.
We're aware of the finding of the wreck. We're not aware particularly of material which has been taken from it. We've certainly not had any reports to us of material from this wreck. Now, the way this wreck is described is it's actually a war grave, and it is an offence to, under the Protection of Military Remains Act 1986, to intrusively dive a war grave. There's nothing to prevent divers from actually visiting the site and looking at the wreck, but it is an offence to actually intrusively dive it and indeed to take anything from it.
But we've discovered gaping loopholes in the laws protecting war graves. To be covered by the Act, lawyers say a wreck must be officially designated by the government. Not one German shipwreck has been designated. And that leaves vessels like the UC-75 unprotected.
Technically, it's not a designated war grave, and that's the problem. I think really wrecks such as that should be, but it's all right putting an order on it to say it is a war grave, but then it's another matter enforcing it and policing it. When you're 10 miles out to sea, it's very difficult to, to police an order like that.
The German government's view is very strict. They consider that any German naval vessels lost, wherever they're lost around the world, are still the property of the German federal government, and they do not want anybody going inside, looking at, doing anything with these vessels, even despite the fact that they're in other people's territorial waters. They really don't want these things touched at all. The UB-30's found relatively recently, and it is very intact. It really hasn't seen an awful lot of abuse, and I would really like it to stay that way, and that's why I really want to be quite vague about where it is. Further down the coast there are divers that basically they're just animals. They will just blow these things to pieces with explosives to get inside them, to plunder them. We feel like we are the official caretakers now of this wreck, and we will certainly be keeping an eye on it, and I would have no problems at all in shopping somebody that starts plundering or pillaging this particular site.
If the law holds little fear for wreck divers, the dangers of the deep do.
Stephen, you are diving with Alan.
Today, Kath Waller, Charles's wife, is in charge of safety for Keighley divers. At least one diver has died on Yorkshire's U-boat wrecks. Divers rely on their buddy for safety, in Kath's case, her husband.
Started because he's a golfer, and I tried golf, didn't get on with it, so we decided we wanted to do something that we could both do. And I've always been a good swimmer, I've always loved the water, and I don't know, we just sort of said, let's learn to dive. I've just got to look at him, and I know what he's thinking. And we can argue underwater really well. I wouldn't say it's dangerous, I'd say it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. It's dangerous if you go out without the training. But death-wise, probably it's no more dangerous than going skiing. Oh, that must be bad. Thanks for helping me, Gordon. Really kind of you. If something does go wrong, then, you know, you're in a hostile environment. If something goes wrong, then you've got a problem.
The day after that dive, Kath and Charles were to discover firsthand the appalling reality of the diver's greatest enemy, the bends.
I lost the ability to stand up, couldn't support my own weight, no feeling at all in the legs, paralysed, yeah, from the chest down. When I got up the ladder and got my gear off, I started feeling a little bit tight across the chest. I could feel pins and needles starting in my feet, and gradually they worked up my legs, both legs at the same time, and then stopped at about the waist. We got a helicopter to come out from RAF Leconfield, whizzed me away to the recompression chamber at Hull. I walked into the chamber, but they had to get me out on a stretcher.
Okay, Charles, what I just want you to do is just lift your leg off the side of the bed and try and lower it down to the floor. Lift your leg all the way up. That's
the
it.
strength in the legs is coming back through intensive physiotherapy, which we've been having at Pinderfields. I've been in here full-time for 4 weeks. When I came in here, I could manage perhaps 3 or 4 steps, people holding me up. Now I can walk for probably a good half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. These sort of things are all coming back, and the strength is definitely improving all the time.
Make sure you've got your balance.
I think any sport that you do has some element of risk in it. People go skiing and they break legs and end up in hospital. Divers have different injuries. I've been unlucky.
Trying to lift your leg up off the floor. That's good.
You can make it. Well, you can make it safe, and you can make the risks acceptable. And I'm not a great risk-taking person.
Not marked on
I believe the returns are worth it.
Yeah, that's Grant's position, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sure how many years I'll be doing this for. The interest is still there at the present time. I'm still burning to get this information, to sort it out. But inevitably, we won't sort it out. Neither of us will sort it out. It's more than one lifetime, is this. All we can do is do our bit to chart history, and then it's on to the next person.
I've been unlucky, I've been unfortunate. It doesn't take away the fact that I probably won't be able to dive again. At the end of the day, the North Sea has still got some superb diving to do. There are shipwrecks down there that nobody's seen them since the day they went down.
Earth, thanks to global warming and the raising of the sea levels.